You're sitting cross-legged on the carpet, inches from the TV screen, controller cord stretched tight across the living room. The cartridge clicks into place with that satisfying snap. You blow on it once, even though you're not supposed to, and hit the power button. The Nintendo logo appears. Your mom yells from the kitchen that dinner's in 20 minutes, but you know you can squeeze in at least 3 lives before then. The sun's going down outside, turning your street that specific orange color that only seemed to exist in the early 90s. Your friends coming over after dinner. You've got all evening. You've got all summer. You've got forever. That was childhood in the early 1990s. And if you felt that in your chest just now, you're in the right place. Hey, welcome to Timewashed Stories. I'm so glad you're here. This channel is all about exploring the everyday magic of life in past decades, the small moments that made us who we are. Today, we're going back to the early 90s, and I want to take you there. Not just show you what it looked like, but help you remember what it actually felt like. If nostalgia like this brings you back, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. All right, let's step back in time. Picture a Monday morning in 1993. You're wearing a windbreaker that makes that swishing sound when you move, and your backpack, the one with way too many zippers and neon accents, is slung over one shoulder because wearing it properly is for little kids. The hallways smell like floor wax and cafeteria breakfast. Lockers slam. Someone's wearing way too much CK1. Your classroom has that pull-down map of the world where the Soviet Union is still shaded in red, even though everyone knows it doesn't exist anymore. The teacher hasn't updated it yet. You've got a Trapper Keeper covered in dolphins, or race cars, or Lisa Frank unicorns, and inside are folders with those 3-hole punch reinforcement stickers you had to carefully place over the torn edges. Your pencil case is clear plastic, stuffed with mechanical pencils, a pink eraser shaped like a sneaker, and at least 3 pens that stopped working weeks ago but you keep anyway. Remember book reports? You'd pick a book from the library, maybe Hatchet, or The Giver, or one of those Goosebumps books everyone was passing around, and you'd write the whole thing by hand, in your best cursive. If you messed up near the end, you'd either squeeze in a correction or start the whole page over. There was no spell check, no backspace, just you, a pen, and the creeping dread that you might smudge the ink before it dried. And during breaks, you'd play tetherball, or foursquare, or wall ball, with a tennis ball so worn down it barely bounced anymore. Kids would trade holographic cards, sports cards, X-Men cards, whatever was popular that week. If you had a rare card, you were basically famous for a day. School picture day meant sitting on that weird stool with the fake modeled background while the photographer told you to tilt your head and say, cheese, and a week later you'd get back those stiff photo sheets in a cardboard folder. Your mom would order the biggest package, even though no one needed 40 wallet-sized copies of your awkward smile. After school, you'd meet up with your friends without a single text message or phone call. You just knew where everyone would be. Maybe at the playground, maybe at someone's house. You'd ride your bike there, no helmet, backpack bouncing against your spine, and you'd stay out until the streetlights came on. That was the rule, wasn't it? Streetlights meant go home. Before that, though, you had hours. You'd build bike ramps out of plywood and cinder blocks in someone's driveway. You'd explore the creek behind the neighborhood, poking sticks at crawfish and pretending you were on some kind of expedition. You'd make up elaborate games with rules that only made sense to the 6 of you playing, and you'd argue about those rules like they mattered more than anything. Someone always had the house where everyone congregated. Maybe their parents were cooler, or maybe they just had the best snacks. You'd pile into their basement or living room, sprawled across couches and floors, watching the same VHS tape you'd all seen 100 times. The Sandlot, or Homeward Bound, or Aladdin. You knew every line. You'd quote them before the characters even said them. If it was too hot, you'd sit on someone's porch, drinking Mondo or Squeeze It, those plastic bottles you had to twist the cap off and then crush to get the last drops. Your hands would be stained red or blue for the rest of the day. Someone's mom might bring out a plate of Dunkaroos or Gushers, and you'd all demolish them in under a minute. You'd talk about everything and nothing, about the episode of Power Rangers that aired that morning, about who could beat who in Mortal Kombat, about the weird substitute teacher, about whether or not ghosts were real. Someone would start a rumor they heard from their older sibling, like the Marilyn Manson rib removal story, or that you could find Mew under the truck in Pokemon, and you'd all believe it completely. And here's the thing, you weren't documenting any of this. There were no phones to pull out, no selfies, no group chats. You were just there, fully present, living in that moment. And maybe that's why it felt so big. Your room was a landscape of toys. Action figures stood in battle formations on your dresser. A half-built Lego spaceship sat on your desk. Maybe you had a Skip-It that you'd gotten for your birthday, the one with the counter on the ball, and you'd see how many spins you could do before your ankle gave out. If you were into Pogs, you had a collection that felt serious. You kept them in a tube or a binder, organized by rarity. You had your favorite slammer, the heavy metal one, or the holographic one, or the 8-ball one, and you'd challenge your friends to games during recess. The stakes felt enormous. Losing your best Pog to someone else was devastating. Girls had easy-bake ovens that made tiny cakes with a literal light bulb, or they'd spend hours with their Polly Pockets, those tiny hinged worlds you could fit in your pocket, setting up elaborate storylines. Maybe you had a Furby later in the decade, that creepy little robot that wouldn't stop talking even when you wanted it to. Boys, and plenty of girls, had G.I. Joes, or Ninja Turtles, or Beast Wars, Transformers lined up like an army. You'd create massive battles that spanned your entire bedroom, complete with sound effects you made with your mouth. You'd assign personalities to each figure. You knew their backstories better than you knew state capitals. And then there were the board games. Dream Phone, I Have a Secret Admirer, which you played even though the phone barely worked anymore. Crossfire, you'll get caught up in the crossfire, which was just absolute chaos. Mall Madness, with its talking electronic console, announcing sales and deals while you raced around a plastic shopping mall. But honestly, a lot of the time, you'd just go outside, you'd play flashlight tag when it got dark, you'd ride your bike to the gas station to buy candy with quarters you'd saved up. You'd make up dances to TLC or Ace of Base in someone's driveway. You didn't need much. You had time, and that was everything. Gaming in the early 90s was a whole ritual. You had your Super Nintendo or your Sega Genesis, and that console was precious. You'd save up for months to buy a new game, or you'd rent one from Blockbuster for the weekend, and you'd play it obsessively because you only had it for 2 days. There was no saving in most games, or if there was, it required a password, a long string of symbols and letters you'd copy down carefully on a piece of paper, terrified you'd get it wrong. If the power went out, you lost everything. If your little sibling turned off the console, you lost everything. You learned patience. You learned perseverance. You learned to memorize patterns and levels because you had to replay them 100 times. And multiplayer meant sitting next to each other on the same couch, same screen, screaming at each other when someone screen watched. Stop looking at my side. You'd play Street Fighter 2 or NBA Jam or Mario Kart until your thumbs hurt, and the winner talked trash for the rest of the day. Handheld gaming meant your Game Boy, the chunky gray brick with the greenish screen that you could barely see unless you were directly under a light. You'd play Tetris or Pokemon or Kirby's Dream Land, and when the batteries died, you'd frantically search the house for AAs, stealing them from the remote control if you had to. Then there was the Tamagotchi phase, that little egg-shaped digital pet that needed constant attention. You'd feed it, clean up after it, play with it during class when the teacher wasn't looking, and if you forgot about it for too long, it died and you'd feel genuinely sad. You'd reset it and start over, promising to do better this time. Music meant your Walkman or Discman. You'd make mixtapes off the radio, hitting record at the exact right moment and praying the DJ didn't talk over the intro. Or you'd save up to buy a CD, just one CD because they weren't cheap, and you'd listen to it front to back, over and over, until you knew every lyric, every beat, every transition between songs. You'd burn through batteries so fast. You'd carry your Discman in your backpack, and it would skip every time you moved too quickly. Anti-skip technology was a big deal when it came out. You'd walk as smoothly as possible, like you were sneaking past a sleeping giant, just to hear a song without interruption. Television was appointment-based. If your show was on at 7:30 on Thursday night, you were in front of the TV at 7:30 on Thursday night. If you missed it, you missed it. There was no streaming, no pausing, no rewind unless you'd set up the VCR ahead of time. And even then, you'd probably record it over something your dad wanted to keep. Saturday mornings were sacred. You'd wake up before your parents, pour yourself a mixing bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Fruity Pebbles, and park yourself in front of the TV for 4 straight hours of cartoons. X-Men, Animaniacs, Darkwing Duck, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Saved by the Bell reruns. You'd watch whatever was on because there were only a few channels, and you were grateful for all of it. Commercials were part of the experience. You didn't skip them, you watched them, and sometimes they were better than the shows. The Tootsie Pop Owl, the Crossfire Kids. I've fallen and I can't get up. You quoted them at school. Everyone knew them. And then there were the TGIF shows on Friday nights. Family Matters, Boy Meets World, Step by Step, Full House. You'd watch with your family, all of you in the living room together, laughing at the same jokes. The theme songs were iconic. You can still hear them, can't you? MTV actually played music videos. You'd watch TRL later in the decade, calling in to vote for your favorite video. You'd tape your favorite videos on a VHS so you could watch them again. Watching the Spice Girls or Backstreet Boys premiere. A new video felt like an event, and if you wanted to watch a movie, you'd go to Blockbuster on Friday night. The whole family would walk the aisles, looking for something everyone agreed on, which was impossible. You'd rent a movie and a bunch of candy, drive home, pop some popcorn, and watch it together. You'd rewind it before returning it because Be Kind Rewind wasn't just a slogan, it was basic decency. After school had a rhythm. You'd walk in the door, drop your backpack in the hallway. Your mom would yell at you to pick it up, and you'd grab a snack. Maybe a Capri Sun and some Dunkaroos. Maybe some bagel bites or pizza rolls you'd microwave until they were molten lava on the inside. Then you'd either do your homework right away or procrastinate by turning on the TV. Nickelodeon was the move. Doug, Rugrats, Hey Arnold, The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Or maybe you'd flip to Cartoon Network. Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken. If you didn't have homework, or if you were ignoring it, you'd call your friend on the landline. You'd stretch the cord as far as it would go, trying to get some privacy. But your mom would pick up the other phone and tell you to get off because she was expecting a call. You'd fight about it. She'd win. Weekends were freedom. On Saturday, maybe your dad would take you to the hardware store or the mall. The mall wasn't just shopping. It was the place to be. You'd go to KB Toys or Electronics Boutique or Sam Goody. You'd look at everything, buy almost nothing, but it didn't matter. You were just happy to be there. Or you'd go to the arcade. The carpet was that chaotic geometric pattern that somehow absorbed all sound. The air smelled like pizza and electricity. You'd have a roll of quarters in your pocket, and you'd feed them into Street Fighter II or Mortal Kombat or the Simpsons arcade game, the one where you could play co-op with 3 friends. The older kids hogged the best machines. You'd watch them play, trying to learn their moves. Sundays meant one of 2 things, either church in the morning, followed by a big lunch, or sleeping in and watching whatever was on TV. Either way, there was a slowness to Sundays, a sense that the weekend was almost over, but not quite yet. Family dinners were a regular thing. Everyone sat at the table. The TV was off. Your mom asked about school. Your dad talked about work. Your sibling kicked you under the table. It was normal. It was boring. It was everything. Holidays felt bigger back then. Halloween meant homemade costumes or the cheap plastic ones from the store with the mask that smelled like chemicals and the flimsy elastic band that always snapped. You'd trick or treat until your pillowcase was heavy with candy. and you'd trade duplicates with your friends the next day like you were negotiating peace treaties. Christmas meant waking up way too early, sneaking into the living room to see what Santa brought, and then waking up your parents. You'd tear through presents in a frenzy, and the living room would be covered in wrapping paper and ribbon. Then you'd spend the rest of the day playing with your new toys, batteries not included, of course, so you'd have to wait until someone made a trip to the store. Your family had one computer, if you had one at all, and it was in the living room or the den. It was beige. It was slow. You'd dial up to the internet, and it would make that screaming modem sound, and then you'd wait 5 minutes for a web page to load. You had 30 minutes online before someone needed to use the phone. You'd instant message your friends on AIM, coming up with the perfect away message that was definitely some angsty song lyric. Music shaped everything. You had your favorite band, and you were devoted. Maybe it was Nirvana, or Green Day, or No Doubt, or Alanis Morissette, or Boyz II Men. You'd buy their CD, open the case, and read every word of the liner notes while listening. You'd memorize the thank yous. You'd stare at the photos. Music felt personal. And fashion. Oh man. You wore overalls with one strap undone. You had a choker necklace. You wore flannel shirts tied around your waist. Your jeans were either way too baggy or way too tight. You had scrunchies, or butterfly clips, or frosted tips, or bowl cuts. You thought you looked cool, and honestly, you did. Everyone did. It was the 90s. Here's what made the early 90s different. The freedom. You weren't tracked. Your parents didn't know where you were every second. You'd leave the house in the morning and come back when you got hungry, or when the streetlights came on. You'd roam the neighborhood, explore, get into minor trouble, figure things out. It wasn't that your parents didn't care, they did. But there was a trust, a sense that the world was small enough and safe enough that kids could just be kids. You'd fall off your bike and scrape your knee, and you'd get back on. You'd get into an argument with a friend, and you'd figure it out by the next day. You learned independence because you had to. There was boredom too, long stretches of nothing to do, and that boredom forced you to be creative. You'd make up games. You'd build forts. You'd put on shows for your parents. You'd draw or write or daydream. You weren't being entertained every second, and that was okay. That was normal. You weren't online. You weren't performing your childhood for an audience. You were just living it, messily and imperfectly, and nobody was keeping score. Growing up in the early 1990s meant living in a world that was slower, smaller, and somehow bigger at the same time. It was a time when you had to be present because there was no other option. When your friendships were built face to face, your memories weren't stored in a cloud, and your childhood belonged to you. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And maybe that's why it still feels so vivid, so real even now, because we lived it fully. We were there. Thanks so much for watching Timewashed Stories. I really hope this brought you back, even just for a little while. If it did, I'd love to hear from you. What do you remember most about growing up in the early 90s? What did I miss? Share your memories in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, feel free to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more where this came from. Until next time, take care, and keep those memories close.